The union budget is just around the corner, and this being the last full budget of the present NDA government, there are great expectations that this may be a populist budget. However, in my view, those who are hoping that we will have very populist budget may be in for disappointment because the expectation may be belied by the reality around. And in my humble view, NDA government may have greater pressure to follow a prudent, pragmatic path. The reason why we have a more pragmatic budget is because on the geopolitical front, there is a lot of instability around us. Countries like China, Pakistan are very notoriously having various hidden, explicit or implicit designs towards our territorial issues. Globally, the geopolitics are really in a flux with the Russian invasion and the US China rivalry intensifying. So, in these times, defense is one area which cannot be compromised. Rather, government would almost have to redouble its focus. Now, once you take out that big kitty, which is roughly, let's say, about 20% plus, then you have a big hole to fill in. And once you have that situation, then you cannot allow your other areas which are important to be compromised. And once that happens, well, taxation, funding, financing becomes important. So, for the sake of our country's growth, I believe that tax incentives may be minimal. Therefore, in such a background, what do we expect the fourth budget of this NDA to? Well, I would like to give an acronym called DREAMS. The six founding pillars of this fourth budget could be given by this acronym called DREAMS. Now, DREAMS stands for the first term D, which is deficit control. Now, with the burgeoning government deficit and with the times of recession ahead, it may not be very prudent to let fiscal deficit go out of control. Owing to COVID, we had a year where fiscal deficit just touched 9.5% or around that level. Well, I am anticipating the government to make efforts to bring it down to under 6%, maybe 5.8, 5.9. That means a minimum 0.6% focus of deficit containment. And therefore, we can't expect too much rationalization on the taxation. Now, once that part is done, the other area which government could do to contain deficit are two specific things. Number one, reduce subsidies. So food and fertilizer are the main areas where we provide subsidies. It's possible that the government could reduce some of these, although they can't tinker much, but at least one of them could see some major cut. The second area is the ministerial and the government expenses. Last year, Modi government charted this territory by starting to cut the consumption part of the expenditures. Well, this tendency is expected to only accelerate. Therefore, cutting down the deficit would be a big priority for the government. The R is related to rural thrust. About 70% of India still lives in rural areas and almost 80% are still dependent on agriculture. And unfortunately, that contributes just about 15% of our GDP. So, towards the government stated mission of doubling farm income, rural thrust is absolutely imperative. That may come in form of various kind of incentives for higher level of equipments, more technology in farming, the drone surveillance of crops, helping logistics, infrastructure, and the services in the rural area. Now, all of this would again mean increasing the expenditure or investment capital in the rural areas, but this is something that I think government would not be thinking twice and would be already buckling up to do that. The third is E. E is for environment. The big word today is green. Green hydrogen, green energy, green ammonia. It's absolutely imperative, and Modi government has already upped the ante when it comes to India's carbon emissions. So I sincerely believe that various schemes would be announced and big focus would be green hydrogen, where electrolyzers make in India could be an important step. Then solar related incentives are likely also on the card. Various financing schemes, technology based investment and FDI norms could also be liberalized. Wind energy is another area which could have big focus. And of course, the most important incentive could be related to electric vehicles. which may also have incentive for battery manufacturing in India. So all in all, environment related sectors could have very high priority because the existing dependence on fossil fuels is really deleterious for our economy. Then A essentially centers around artificial intelligence based automation. Now, what do I mean by this? Artificial intelligence based automation essentially implies to the government trying to encourage digitalization, communication. It may happen, of course, most noticeably in the field of DigiRupee. Already, central bank DigiCurrency is on the rollout. Similarly, in the field of fintech, where we are expecting the digital bank to be rolled out, we are talking about neo banking and, of course, digitalization of existing banks. It's quite likely that the government would be taking artificial intelligence acceleration route to ensure that through automation we increase the productivity of our organizations. It's likely that various initiatives like disinvestments could be accelerated to fund this part of the development. At the end of the day, India is a very big technology behemoth, and if we ourselves do not have artificial intelligence in our own economy, well, there is something we are missing over there. So I believe that there will be a big thrust to AI based automation. Then, fifth M, well, no prizes for guessing, is Make in India. The government has a stated ambition that India should not just be the service capital of the world, we should also be a manufacturing capital. Now, with the recent turbulence in China, COVID related issues, polarization challenge of US versus China constrained relationships gives a great opportunity to India. And therefore, the big thrust could be on the schemes of PLI, production linked incentive. I also anticipate some export relative incentives could be accelerated, and the government may encourage FDI in various sectors, or actually may increase the ratio of overseas investments and make the collaboration infrastructure easier, because Make in India is definitely the future of India. And the last, sixth sector is related to soft skills, services, and semiconductors. Now, why do I talk about semiconductors in S? Semiconductors are vital because as of now, India is nowhere in this production. And the government has recognized that a huge financing initiative is required to shift this industry. And for that to happen, a specific budgetary thrust is imperative. Soft skills would essentially come in terms of health, education, reskilling, upskilling, and skill development to create employment. The globe is apprehended to enter into a slowdown, if not a recession. So at this time, soft power development will become very vital. And finally, the last part of S is services, where India, being such a huge surplus generator when it comes to services exports versus imports, I believe that the government would have to up the ante when it comes to supporting our KPO, BPO, wealth management, and various other technology-based services which we are doing. So all in all, I believe that the task is very well cut out, and as a nation, we should be prepared to have a budget which may not be excessively populist. Some tweakers, some insertions may be there, but the budget is likely to follow the path of pragmatism and therefore should be a budget of dreams.